Stiamo trasmettendo da Università di Tuscia, Viterbo, e iniziamo questo seminario del professor Maurizio Tira che rientra all'interno che facciamo di Transnational Education, in particolare di un progetto che si chiama IMPACT, che diciamo, si concentra moltissimo sulla cooperazione universitaria tra università italiane e del Nord Africa. Nel caso specifico, in questa unità che coordino qui a Viterbo, ci occupiamo in particolare di doppi diplomi, joint degree e double degrees, però il progetto è molto più ampio e è coordinato dal professor Giorgio Resta, Rome 3, che dovreste vedere sul monitor, che vi saluta con la mano e che ringrazio per la presenza. E a cui direttamente darei la parola per introdurre qualcosa del progetto e poi daremo la parola finalmente al professor Maurizio Tira, che ringrazio già da subito per la disponibilità di venire qui in presenza a Viterbo, e poi il seminario continuerà anche domani in soltanto un anno. Quindi grazie.
Simone, sorry, let me translate in English. This is for the people that follow us in the room, in the remote sense. So this seminar is part of the TNE IMPACT initiative, which focus on understanding the value and the impact of transnational education, particularly in the cooperation between European and Mediterranean contexts. It offers an opportunity to reflect not only on academic mobility, but also on how this experience shape the skills, perspectives, and institutional collaboration. We are very pleased to host this event here in the Sala Spinelli, in the presence of Professor Tira and Professor Severini, and also the Professor Giorgio Resta, Vice Director of Roma Tre University, that coordinating institutional at the institutional level the entire project. So thank you, Professor Resta. I pass the floor to you for a brief greeting. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Giorgio. I think I would directly speak in English if you agree, so to avoid the double translation. I would like, first of all, to greet you all. I'm sorry I'm not being able today to be there, but let me thank, first of all, Simone Severini, a great colleague of mine, whom we owe much of the initial effort to build up this network of universities, and the writing also of the project whose name Impact was already mentioned by Simone. And secondly, I would like to warmly greet and thank as well Professor Maurizio Tira, who is really one of the persons who have done most in Italy to advance the projects of international cooperation when it was already in the CRUI, and today sitting also on the board of the EWA. And Maurizio Tira is behind some of the most important reports about internationalization of Italian universities. So we will learn a lot from his experience, and we are extremely grateful for his acceptation of our invitation. Just a few words about the ideas behind this project. It comes out after a call which was launched by the Ministry of University regarding the projects for international cooperation with specific regard to teaching in selected areas in the world. And we decided, together with Simone, together with Bianca Sulpasso from the University of Tor Vergata, and together with our colleagues Nisti Ko and the other Bruno Botto, who was at the time at La Sapienza. So a network of universities that decided to focus on the relationship between the universities in the Lazio region and the Mediterranean environment. And in particular, we decided to focus on North Africa, with three countries considered as target countries: Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt. We thought that it was extremely important to look at our traditional partners since the time of the Roman Empire and since the development of what Fernand Braudel called the Mediterranean universe. I think that we have strong opportunities to develop a future exchanges to integrate more our university systems, and also to try to offer to our fellow students and partners, professors in North Africa, another possibility of getting an education in Italy without using the traditional French language, traditional considering the number of Francophone speakers in that area. But once again, trying to build on historic cooperation between Italy and the North African world. So we used the funding by the university to develop several lines of cooperation, the most important of which is certainly the mobility. We had a huge number of scholarship awarded to incoming students from North Africa to the various universities involved in this project: La Sapienza, Tor Vergata, Roma 3, Tuscia, Cassino, and University for Foreigners in Perugia, who is the only university outside the Lazio region. So we received a lot of students, but also we have been sending many students in various fields, from archaeology to Arab language to chemistry. Our students have been in North Africa for several periods, and it's been extremely instructive experience of cooperation. Out of this project are developing collaborations also in the field of research. I know that there are several projects that have been submitted for funding to various agencies or will be submitted, but also we started to have important discussions with various universities with the aim of closing double degrees or joint degrees, which will be the topic of today's important speech by Maurizio Tira. We do hope that this project has been just a first step in a larger venue of collaboration with university in North Africa, essentially not only because I think that we can strengthen our attractivity towards this part of the world, but also because I'm sure that looking at the problems and the challenges that our contemporary world faces today, from the point of view and from the perspective of people living in a less privileged part of the world, as it is the continent of Africa, will bring to us extremely important and necessary perspective to really appreciate the type of problems that most of the people in the world are experiencing today, and that sometimes from our laboratory, European laboratory, we cannot appreciate in their entirety. So I think that we can learn together from this experience of collaboration. And if we manage to give an institutional framework, in particular with strong cooperation afforded, for example, by double degrees and joint degrees, we will be able to build together a better future. So thank you so much for organizing this, and have a great discussion through these two meetings. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Professor Severini, who invited me, and to Professor Resta, especially for his very kind words. I hope to be enough useful for your thoughts and your reflection in this project that is very important, as Professor Resta underlined. I'm also very happy to be here in your beautiful university, which I knew already from the past. And I will start by introducing a little bit myself, because Professor Resta already said that I am serving in the board of European University Association. Well, I used to be rector of the University of Brescia, which is in the north of Italy. There is another one, Brescia University in Georgia, United States. That's not the one where I come from. I served since 2016 to 2022. At that period, I was in the board of the National Rectors Conference, and I had a portfolio on internationalization. So we worked together with Professor Severini also at that time. And after finishing my mandate, I candidate for the board of European University Association, which I now try to explain what it is. And also member of the board of the Governing Council of the Magna Carta Observatory. I also will try to explain what it is, because they are both very much relevant for what we are going to discuss today. As Professor Resta said, well, maybe we should speak also French rather than just English, but sorry, we cannot do it two languages together. What is EUA? EUA, European University Association, where Europe doesn't stand for the Europe 27, but for the area of the Council of Europe. That is more or less the higher education area of Europe. That means maybe you are aware of the Council of Europe. It is an older institution, and it groups 49 countries. So the 27 plus 20 others, because 2 are now suspended from the board of the EUA, that is Russia and Belarus. We suspended the members at the day after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russian army. In the European University Association, we have more than 900 universities as single members. So it is the largest organization of university in the area of higher education, the area of Council of Europe. And that's very important. We have 36 national rectors conferences represented in the council. That means that we reach out also other universities that are not single members, but they belong to the national rectors conferences. And why only 36? Because in some little countries, they even do not have a rectors conference. So that's the strength of EUA. What do? We play a role in the Bologna process, which you know very well. And we try to lobbying to European Commission and the higher education area institution, so the Bologna process area, about the policies in education, research, innovation, and social engagement. So the missions of our universities. We call EUA we tend to be the voice of Europe's university because we speak in the name of our members. This is the European higher education area. As I told you, there are more countries than 27 members of the Commission, and in violet you see the two countries that have been suspended since 2020. The European University Association, together with the University of Bologna, that you all know, the alma mater, we founded the Magna Carta Governing Council. What is the Magna Carta? The Magna Carta takes the name from the very famous UK English Magna Carta. It is a set of principles for universities all over the world. So that's not just Europe, it's not just higher education area of Europe, but it is the entire world. And EUA and the University of Bologna are the founders. So I am in the board of the Magna Carta Governing Council representing EUA, but indeed I deal also with problems that open up to the entire world in the Magna Carta. Magna Carta, there are some 1,000 signatories university all over the world. That's why you can understand how large is EUA, having only in the area of higher education in Europe 900 members, where the Magna Carta has 1,000 signatories all over the world. If you want, of course, to have more information about EUA Magna Carta, then you can go on the website. Magna Carta, last words, was an idea of Professor Roversi Monaco in 1988. Professor Roversi Monaco, former rector of Bologna, just passed away some days ago. And they decided in 1988 It was the 900th anniversary of the founding of Bologna University, according to Carducci, that decided that Bologna was founded in 1088. And in that year, they decided to issue this Magna Carta. And later on, we established the Magna Carta Observatory. That means we want to observe the respect of the basic values of university all over the planet. I no need to say that we are very much concerned with the situation in the United States, having a member in the Magna Carta Governing Council. Again, as I said, in Georgia, we have a member in the Magna Carta Governing Council, and some other countries. So this is my affiliation regarding what I'm talking about. Then I'm a university professor, so I do also some teaching and research. I do the other. Today, I will maybe focus a little bit more on what Europe is doing and some strategies. Tomorrow, we try to open up a little bit more to the entire world. Even if, of course, my perspective is mainly European. Well, the European University Association, a few years ago, issued a strategy that we call University Without Walls. And I think the meaning is very clear. In University Without Walls, a vision for 2030, we put forward three main pillars. The university has to be open, transformative, and transnational. This is the name of Transnational Education Initiative. So we are just trying to set up programs of education that are transnational. Being transnational is not just speaking different languages, is considering different approaches, different cultures, different skills, different contexts that exist in different countries. I'm an environmental engineer, I didn't tell you before, and so I'm very much engaged in the problem of environmental sustainability. And the approach to environmental sustainability from different countries on the planet is completely different. The way we see the problem from the north of the world, Europe, is completely different from the way they see the problem from Central Africa, from India, China, or Vanuatu, or other countries on the planet. So transnational is really open the doors, so the opposite of building walls, open the boundaries, try to understand each other out and more, far more than from the linguistic point of view, and trying to cooperate, bearing in mind that the world is changing. The world is changing very rapidly. We know, not just because there are crazy guys, leaders in some countries, but because it's changing anyway. And these guys will pass, but the changing will continue. So the population in Africa at the end of the century will more than double. Now it's less than 2 billion. At the end of the century, it will be 4 billion. The population in China will slightly decrease at the end of the century, whereas the population of India will continue to increase. And the population of Europe and North America will remain stable. So even from demographic point of view, because number counts, Europe will be a little minority. We will be less populated than one single country in Africa, Nigeria, that at the end of the century will have 500 million inhabitants. So even if we don't want, we have to change our way we see the world, the eyes with which we see the world. So that means transnational, not just speaking a bad English to my students. I teach in English since 15 years. So speaking a bad English to poor Italians that do not understand very much English. That's not translational. It's something that we do to attract and to open. Yes, but it's not enough. Second pillar is the university must be sustainable. I don't want to go very much in details to understand very well. Diverse. This is something to be attentive because equity, you know what is equity, diversity, inclusion, not just by name, but as a policy. It was Professor Kennedy that introduced first in 1961, a very important year because it was born. and the Beatles made the first concert. Well, President Kennedy in 1961 introduced in the United States the regulation about equity, diversity, and inclusion for the employment of staff in the civil servant. So that means that to be a civil servant, they have to break the barriers of language, race, gender, and so on. Equity, diversity. It was very much important. And if you have noticed, President Trump was dismissing many of these policies of equity, diversity, inclusion that had been taken also by private company then. And some private company obeyed President Trump, some other didn't. So diverse and engaged. You know that the social responsibility of university is more and more increasing in importance. We call it third mission. This is an horrible name. That means that we do not know how to call it. It's good to call it social engagement. So that means what we do as research, what we do as teaching, has to do with the entire society. It's not just something for those who are lucky to be either professor or student at university. So engage. The third pillar is strong, autonomous, and accountable. Autonomous and accountable go together because autonomy doesn't mean you do what you want, especially if you are a public university. So accountable means that you are responsible for the resources that the state gives you. So that means the people give you through taxes. And autonomy is to serve accountability. So we are autonomous because we don't want any political power to tell us what we should teach or not teach. That's not autonomy. But autonomy doesn't mean that we do what we want without listening to society, without listening to the changing of the labor market, without listening to the needs of new generation, so on and so forth. Okay, so it's very important to link two words. Autonomy for being accountable, but autonomy is crucial. In Italy, universities are autonomous, and we have to be very proud of this autonomy because that gives us the freedom to make the research that is curiosity-driven, not the research that someone wants us to do. So these are the main points that we'll address. So is the international dimension that I strongly believe it is a reality for the member university, and I give you some results from the review Trends 2024 that we did in the European University Association. Again, it is for 47 countries. So this was a survey conducted among our members, and the respondents are 482, so quite a significant number of respondents. And you see this, the question was, how important are the following areas for your institution? And you see the first answer is, as I said, this horrible word, the third mission, a contribution to society. It's important to notice. So the 83% said it is very important and 16 medium important. But it is the first rank. And it is the third mission and the contribution to society. I'm sure that if we had done this survey 30 years ago, at the first line you should have met teaching or research. I don't know, depending on which sort of university. But comprehensive research probably at the same level. But now it's the third mission. So there is awareness of how important is what we do for the external actors, stakeholders. But at the second rank is internationalization and global outreach. So and it is more or less the same score. So and then it comes innovation, and then it comes, you see at the end, for example, lifelong learning. So these policies that are, present in all universities have been ranked in this way. So internationalization is very important. Be careful, as I said before, internationalization is that. So being one word, being in relation, and so on and so forth. Not just attracting students from abroad because Italian students are diminishing, or because the students, I don't know, in Austria or in the countries growing elder, they are diminishing. That is tactic, that is not strategy. It can be also, but not only, Again, another question, and I see screen. Which of the following developments have impacted your institution overall strategy in the past 5 years? And again, you see, so what of the external challenges have impacted university? Not what is your strategy, but what comes from outside. And first is digitalization. Second, the survey was done in 2024. And so the memory of COVID was present. So COVID impacted very much universities. But third is the enhanced cooperation with other higher education institutions. HEI means higher education institutions. So again, the cooperation with other higher education institutions is not just a strategy, but something that impacted from outside to inside the university. So it happened and it changed. I will mention later on. In this time, we have seen the development of European University Alliances. I know that you are also in an alliance. I will mention also the alliances. So in 2024, we were already in the process of alliances. So the alliances have impacted very much our university from many points of view. Then, some other results of the survey. Does your institution offer joint degrees and or joint programs? Responded 397. And you see that a proportion of 26 said we have 5 or more joint degrees. And on the other side, 27%, so nearly the same, said we have 5 or more joint programs. This is not a joint European degree that I'm going to speak about at the end of the session, but these are things that are already in place. So that means that there is a significant portion, if you add also the 31% and 26 that say, yes, we have, but less than 5. So with at least one, we have 57 on the other side, 53% of universities, so more than half, with either a joint degree or a joint program. So that means the cooperation is already in place. Then, students with mobility experience. What is the percentage of students with at least one physical mobility experience upon graduation? And you see that in the figures, we have less than 5% of the students with at least one mobility experience are the 34% of bachelor courses, 37% of masters. But if you go up to the more than 50%, so at the end of the right part of the graph, of the table, you see that more than 50% is especially the PhD. So that means that PhD is quite relevant for international experiences. I also may say that Italian universities, sorry to speak a little bit on just once, but Italian universities are attracting maybe much more candidates in the PhD programs, and from a broad perspective, from a broad number of countries than maybe in the bachelor, for example. But at the same time, what is the main challenge that you, the respondent, have seen in mobility? And you see what is the first 81% said that this is the main problem. Students cannot afford mobility. So this we have to take into consideration, that it is difficult sometimes to afford physical mobility for different reasons. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's the lack of accommodation, of the cost or the cost of accommodation. For some countries, it is nearly impossible. If you want to finish your studies in the United States, you have to afford to go not just in Ivy League, but in a good university, some $40,000, $50,000 tuition fee per year. Okay, so that's the extreme example. But also, if you move inside Europe, there are some countries, especially the Nordic countries of Europe, that are very expensive. And usually, the Erasmus scholarship doesn't cover the cost. So, if the family can support the kids, they can go. If not, they cannot. Anyway, the main problem is the affordability of mobility, of physical mobility. So that's why we are lobbying in these days for the European Commission to put enough money. So we ask for 60 billion in the Erasmus Plus project because we need money to continue this experience. The second is also interesting for some academic disciplines and profession. The credit mobility is difficult. These open up a window on one of the problems of joint degrees. For some disciplines and profession, the credit mobility, the mutual recognition of credits is a problem. Indeed, this probably is the most important problem in the direction of joint European degrees. But I go back to this. And I'm finished with the survey. How has the student population changed in your institution? In the past 5 years, you see, the international students has increased for 65% of universities. So that means that the international students, you know that international students, should say, because it's not a problem of nationality, because I live in a town, Brescia, where there are more or less 30% of population that is from other countries coming. Many of them doesn't have an Italian nationality, but they were born in Brescia. So this will not account in the international students because they're not studying in Brescia just because they came from or studying, but they were born there. Probably the process of getting a nationality long. So the international students has increased for the majority of the respondents, and the expectation is even bigger. 77% says we expect that they will increase more. So mobility and internationalization is a fact, is a strategy, is something that we follow as a process, and is something that we want to increase. And it is also there. Maybe I jump too much to the next one. Well, the importance of the EU strategies. First one, this question was, how important are the European Union strategies? And the answer is Erasmus Plus program for 90% of respondents, highly important. You see, so the Erasmus Plus and this beautiful experience we have experienced for decades is the first of the European strategies that are felt important by universities. This is not what is felt important by the university itself, but which strategy of Europe is important, slightly different. And it is said that it is the Erasmus Plus project. Well, just a short notice about European alliances. European alliances are rooted in the European strategy for university 2022. You are all member of the staff or professor, you know exactly who you are, but you know many things. So please, if you get bored, before falling asleep, you tell me and I will accelerate, we jump or whatever. It's not nice to see people sleeping. I mean, it's good sleeping, but it gets.
No problem. No, just to let you know who they are, because I mean, this is an important information for you. Many of them are from the International Mobility Office. Well, there is also Stefano Speranza, that's a professor and sort of delegate for international relations of the rector. And so many of them are from the Mobility Cooperation Office, so they know a lot about the Erasmus program, and others are from the International Student Office, mostly focused on the recruitment part. So most of them are staff, let's say, working on this subject. Just maybe it helps you.
Anyway, if you want me to accelerate or whatever, please raise your hand. So the European strategy for university, it issued in 2022, has 4 pillars. Before I told you about the strategy of the UA, this is the vision strategy of the European Commission. And the four pillars are strengthen the European dimension in higher education and research, You see, it is internationalization seen from the point of view of Europe, support university as lighthouses of European way of life. Let me stop a little bit on this concept because I wonder myself many times today, what is the European way of life? What is the European way of life? We make a survey, what is the European way of life? Is that the way we live in Italy? Is the way they live in UK? Is the way they live in Georgia, in Ukraine? Because they are in the higher education area. Is that the way of life that we want to promote? There are many challenges to this strategy. These are visions, okay, but we have to work hard for that because the European way of life is now threatened by the recent wars, and it is a big issue. Third, empower university as actors of change in the twin green and digital transitions. I'm sure you are aware of the fact that the Prague report is in the wood of this third pillar, more on the digital transition and innovation rather than the green, indeed. But it is Prague report, underlines very much the importance of linking the innovation and competition with European values. So the main basic message of Prague report 2024 is without winning the game of competing with other countries, especially United States on one side and China from the other side, Europe would not be able to defend its own values. This is a very important reflection. So values have to be defended, has to be put forward. But how can we do that if we lose the competition? I don't have an answer. I don't know if Draghi has an answer. But if it has put forward this problem. You remember very well when he was asked in the European Parliament, they said, you asked me what to do. I don't know, sir, but do something. No? So we have to do something. And it is clearly stated by Draghi that the values are not given for granted for always. That's important. That's challenging. The fourth pillar is reinforce university as drivers of EU's global role and leadership. I strongly believe in this. The universities in Europe can be one, not the only one, but a very important actor in putting forward the values, the role, and the leadership. Because university leaders are really leaders. So, I mean, someone that can decide about the future of students, staff, colleagues. In the European University Association, among our members, we have 18 million students. So that means that we can address 18 million young people that are studying for their life. So European universities are a unique environment where you have together different generations, different genders, different culture. And so they can really be a place that helps Europe to put forward its role and leadership. Of course, with main difficulties. So the European University Alliances, I'm sure you are aware of that. Now they are 65 in 35 countries. Again, say our education area, member of outside the mission, outside the 27 are affiliated, but many alliances have affiliated members. And then there are many other associated partners. You are well aware of this. But what is the main scope of the European alliances? They were launched, remember, 2017 by President Macron. It was the idea that in Europe, one day you can get a degree, doesn't matter where, and the portability, the value of that degree is recognized by all the other countries in the Union, which is not just a double degree between two institutions, but it is a joint European with some characteristics degree. I think that that's a great idea, but it's very difficult because the European Commission doesn't have any power in education to issue regulation and directives, where they have for research and innovation. but they don't have for education. So the educational systems in the 27 countries are different. And so the European University Alliances are pilot projects to see if A/12 is the size of an alliance. Universities can find out an agreement among themselves that means an agreement among their original countries to set out a joint European degree. There are different stages of which alliances are working on the issue. Many have concentrated on a too large set of goals, I may say. I'm involved in two alliances. One is the one of my university, and the other one because I'm in the advisory board. And sometimes there is too much in the alliance. We want probably to do everything, but the main focus we never forget is pilot project for a joint European degree, not especially cooperation in research, because we do cooperate in research since we were very young. I mean, I'm working in funded, European funded projects since the very beginning of my career, because that's one of the most important source of money. So it's not the main goal is not to cooperate in research. Also because you cooperate in research with your colleagues. So if I don't have colleagues in the university of my alliance, how can I cooperate with a physician? I mean, be an engineer. And so that's the goal. It is a very nice challenge. We have to see what they are producing, and we'll tell you something more about evaluation. So the European degree label is one step before the joint European degree. It is not yet a joint European degree, but it is something that is already put forward by the European Commission. I don't want to bother you, but a very important milestone is the third one, 2024. Because in 2024, the Commission issued the blueprint for European degree that explains better what is labeled, what is the degree, what is the way towards the joint European degree. And the drivers are Erasmus Mundus funding. That's why we are fighting for increasing the funding in the Erasmus Mundus, because that's the place where the money comes from, and the European University Initiative, as I said. Not all the, if you don't mind, I think quite short work. So not all the universities in the European higher education area are a member of an alliance. So another point to be taken into account is that these are pilot projects. They should not be the ranking. So they're not another ranking of the best universities because they are in an alliance so that we'll receive more money, because the other half of the world that is not an alliance will not accept that the Commission will only sustain the alliances. So do not expect to be financed forever in the alliance. One day it will finish. They will see if the alliance has reached something in the path toward the joint European degree or not, because it cannot last forever, not possible. And so the basic definition agreed within the European higher education area are: a joint program is an integrated curriculum coordinated and offered jointly by different higher education institutions and leading to double multiple degrees for a joint degree, not joint degree for a joint degree. A double multiple degrees as a separate degrees awarded by higher education institution offered to joint program attesting successful completion of this program. If 2 degrees are awarded by 2 institutions, this is double. The joint degree is a single document awarded by higher education institutions offering the joint program in national and knowledge and the recognized award of the joint program. So there are slight but important differences between joint program, multiple degrees, and joint degree. The blueprint for a European degree, which is a joint past European degree, is issued in 2024, says that in view of the diversity of European higher education systems across Europe, the Commission proposes a gradual approach for EU countries toward European degree, with two possible entry points. A preparatory European label given to joint degree programs that meet European criteria, so existing programs for joint degree with a label, okay, certificate of excellence. That this means the students receive a European degree level certificate together with the job. And a European degree, that is the final goal, we are not there, the final goal that is a new type of qualification awarded either jointly by several universities from different countries or possibly by a European legal entity established by such universities. I don't know if your alliance, you're reflecting about a new legal entity. So maybe we can leave some 15 minutes of discussion again. In my alliance, we established a European legal entity, the GEIE, a group of general interest, economic general interest at European level. But it is almost an empty box. We have established, but we are not using it as a legal entity to issue degrees. So that's the point, that's the challenge. But the European degree, as its purpose, as a great oh my God, you don't tell anything, you know, you just want to see me bankrupting. So the label and the so because I'm changing also my slides on my computer and I forgot to do screen. Sorry also for those connected. I'm an old chap, you know. And so the joint European degree has a great strength because that means that if someone comes to Europe and got his degree in Viterbo, that's valid everywhere in Europe. So that means that also the attraction of university can change radically because I'm an engineer. I got my degree in Polytechnic in Milan, which is a first-class university, I would say in Italy and maybe in Europe and in the world. And now I teach in the University of Brescia that is not with the same reputation of Polytechnic. And so if a foreign student comes to Italy and can afford to live in Milan, for sure he will choose to go to Milan, as I did. But if the degree issued by the University of Brescia, that the quality is not so poor, I mean, brand is something, maybe the quality is not the same. Even for the most famous university, sometimes the brand does not correspond anymore to the value. And then it depends finally from professors. There are professors that are so high quality everywhere. And that's, if I may open a parenthesis, in Italy, it is especially our specialty. So we don't have universities that are placed at the very top level of rankings. But if you look at the placement of all universities in rankings, and you make sort of an average, Italy is maybe the fourth or fifth best university system in the world as a system, with no first class, but with a very common high quality. Okay, so if you have a joint degree issued with a legal value everywhere, that means that even a small university can attract students from other countries or other cultures because that degree, then you can use it in Europe. So that's a great added value. Together with the fact that going to a joint degree obliges you to put together different systems. Although now you work in staff, so you do the dirty job because it's nice to speak about these things, but then when you have to look at the accreditation procedure and the evaluation procedure, the syllabus, the lazy professors you have to deal with. I say for you, but you know that I'm true. No, it's no, I'm not Simone myself, but the other ones. and even not the not the three in the room, but so when you have to deal with these all details, not details, technical problems, it's not easy. It's not at all easy. You know, for example, that the Hamburg, the Italian evaluation agency, entered in the ACAR, the Confederation, only some years ago, not many years ago. So these are real problems, real life problems. But we have to look ahead. We have to have a vision. When I spoke with Commissioner Gabriel was commissioner until 2 years ago, correctly, and she was very passionate. And she told me 3 years ago, we need 20 years to get to the joint European Union. Maybe it was a little bit not optimistic, pessimistic, but she was very passionate. She believed strongly in this process, in this project. So that's the meaning. And that's why I think that the joint European degree is not just a matter for Europe. It's a matter for the world. It is the translation of the European values, European way of life, and so on, European culture in a degree. That was the reality of our university in the past. You know that Erasmus, that gives the name to the program, got his PhD in Turin, and he studied and taught in many universities. Because at that time, we didn't have Hamburg, we didn't have accreditation system, and so on and so forth. I'm not there to be president and saying that, but sometimes we made the life a little bit too much difficult, and doesn't go together always with quality, with bureaucracy. But we have to fight because establish a legal entity, which is not at all easy. University are legal entities. Establish another legal entity means the university has to join another legal entity that groups together the University of the Alliance. It is not an easy process. In this room, we have discussions with the Senate and Council of Administration. These are not easy tasks, but we like challenges. So the European degree label is a step towards the joint degree, spanning several EU member states and designed to encourage student mobility and cooperation. So as a first step, that's not the goal. This is the first step. It will reflect the skills and learning outcomes. So you start already trying to put together some skills and learning outcomes. If you give the label, it means that you recognize at least that the program is valuable, not legally, but from point of view of the contents, it's valuable. And so, for the two that will join the program, follow a joint program, several institutions, this can be something that includes the skills that you acquire and so on. But the label has a mark of quality that you give to a joint program. This is much easier to do because it is an agreement among university members of the Alliance. You see the difference. Indeed, you see the differences between the label and the degree. So the label is a certificate certifying the compliance of a joint degree program with European criteria, but the degree is a new type of joint degree embedded in national legislation. A single diploma awarded by the higher education institution offering the joint degree program matching European criteria. And I go on with the columns. The label accompanies the diploma of students graduating from such a joint program. However, it would have no legal value on its own, not a national qualification. So not even a legal value of countries and not even a national qualification. If you have got your master degree with a label, you cannot say that you are better than another. It's just because you follow a joint program with some prerequisites. The joint degree, European degree, needs to meet the agreed European criteria only, and the member states would not add national constraints on top, which is all but easy. All but easy. Again, the label could help with a strong brand promoting the delivery of joint degree programs, so as a first step toward the joint degree, but it would not make it simpler because higher institutions to set up and deliver one. It would not solve the compatibilities between national rules. On the other side, a huge simplification for any higher education institution wishing to develop a joint degree with as many partners as possible based on common denominator for member states. I would stop a little bit on this point on column right, because I think that if we want to get to a joint European degree, we have to work very much on our own system and to reach a higher simplification. Doesn't mean less quality, but a higher simplification. And that means that we have to harmonize system finding the common denominator in the member states. It's very difficult, but some things that we have added to our legislation are not indeed necessary for the quality. For example, from one side, we are insisting very much on transdisciplinary research, right? But myself and Professor Severini, we have a label that is our scientific sector. And if I publish a marvelous paper on nature on his subject, which is possible, of course, but in case of plagiarism, anyway, it cannot be evaluated in my career is almost finished, but anyway, it could have not been evaluated in my career positively. And I wrote on some reviews, not of my sector, because interdisciplinarity is very important, but it's not recognized by academia and the systems. Is that something that adds value to what we do? I don't think so. The added value comes from the interdisciplinarity, but we have to overtake this system. Not all countries have this mark that we have on our skin that you belong to that sector. And if you want to change sector, you have to have enough prerequisites. You have to ask the National Council of the University for the permission, and then you can change. Okay, so this is one of the obstacles that Italy, for example, puts forward in the way of cooperation. Because if you don't have sectors in our countries, what is the syllabus? Where we count the credits according to this or that sector. You must have the number of credits, minimum number of that one. Now we have much more freedom than in the past, so we can have many other courses, but there is a core of courses that must be allocated to some scientific disciplinary sectors. So I think that this joint European degree, even if we don't get easily to the joint European degree, should be a reflection for our own minister in the way of simplification. There are many things changing. Now, since COVID, for example, physicians, they got their habilitation to profession directly when they got their master degree. That was not the case before. They had to pass a state exam. Tomorrow morning, I have a meeting in the National Rectors Conference because engineers are proposing a way to get a habilitation to profession straight when they got their master degree. And the National Council of Engineers is proposing to abolish the possibility to be a professional with a bachelor in engineering. So there are changing that comes also from outside push from the liberal profession, for example. They are asking for something different. We have 3 sections in the engineer list of engineers officially recognized by the state, by the Ministry of Justice. We have 3 sectors. We are proposing to enlarge to 5 because there were topics that did not exist before. So, for example, artificial intelligence, all the research that goes on in that field, who is the engineer that can do that? It doesn't exist in the 3 sections, civil, environmental, mechanical, and electronic. So there are many things that are changing anyway. We should take the opportunity to reflect because of changing to make it a little bit more simple. If it becomes more simple, it's much easier to do something with another country. The more it's complicated, the most it is impossible to cooperate in this line of the joint European degree. So these are the differences between the level and the joint. So the joint degree is this is a way through, the co-creation process to gather evidence and shape initiative. I know that I'm a little bit maybe boring, so tell me, react if you want to say, well, stop, coffee break, the nap, or whatever you can tell. Um, I propose myself to make a little change in the slides because I want to show you, before going back to the joint degree, it's continuing on the same line can be boring. I jump to this, and then maybe tomorrow I will go back to the joint Europe. There are other initiatives at the European level. So we leave a little bit the joint European degree screen and let's see again tomorrow a little bit more in details. But there are other policies and strategies at European level that have been issued in these years that are quite relevant. One that I don't have a slide is the European Strategy for Innovation. European Strategy for Innovation, if I'm not mistaken, is 2024. Is another strategy, sorry, on the slide, but you can find on the website, that says European Union should attract talents coming from other countries or attracting back their own talents based on the fact that we provide the culture of Europe, but also the means for conducting research. So developing spin-off, startups, and new skills and so on. European Strategy for Innovation. Look at the website if you are interested. It is quite interesting. And the Choose Europe statement, again, launched by President Macron, who is very active, who is very French. When he has an idea, he has an idea, and I propose to follow the one. But I like French guys in a way. It's good to have ideas. So he launched this initiative of Choose Europe, inviting all the world to this announcement. So I received by email an invitation to go to the ceremony of Choose Europe, and I'm not the most important one. So he was really inviting the world to this launching of initiative. And Choose Europe is very much rooted in the European Strategy for Innovation. So Europe attracting researchers to come to make research in Europe. But, we are facing the opposite movement. Yesterday evening, I was talking in a place about a completely different topic because I'm interdisciplinary. And so it was the Article 9 of the Constitution. But it has to do with sustainability. You know, the Article 9 of the Constitution is the article that states that state should push forward the scientific and technological research. And together, there is another part about landscape. To prepare to the lesson of yesterday, I read the debate in the parliament when they approved that article of the constitutional law of Italy. And in the debate, there was a man, a member of the assembly, that said we should stop the emigration of Italian talents abroad. 1947. The state should do its best to attract and to maintain our researcher in the state because that's our strength. It was 1947. 1947, 8 years ago, they already had in Italy this problem. Okay, so sorry again, the parenthesis about Italy. Apologize. Italians listening. But this is a little bit tricky because it seems that it's ever been a problem. So we know how many people contributed to the advancement of science abroad and coming from different countries, not just Italian going abroad, but from many, many countries going abroad. And going where? In the States, where when you arrive, they say you, hello, welcome, a chat, what are you doing here? And they give you a laptop, they give you desk, and maybe they give you some $1 million, and they say, do your research at your best for 3 years. Then we will see the results. If the results are not enough, hello, see you again. But if they are, they keep you there. And this we are not able to do. We cannot attract Nobel Prize. You know, that's one of the indicators for rankings is how many Nobel Prize you have. How can you attract a Nobel Prize to teach a course in Viterbo? How can you pay him $20,000 per lesson per year? In my university, we pay 5,000 euros for one full course. And we are among universities that pays better. Don't say to your director. We pay not badly, but 5,000 for 90 hours, you will never find Nobel Prize that will come. Okay, so the innovation, the strategy for innovation is let's attract. You know that Macron launched the idea choose Europe because of Trump. So, but that should not be a reaction to Trump that will classify. It was said in our debate in the Constitution in 1947. So it's a long story. So another strategy is called the Union of Skills. The Union of Skills was issued in 2025, again by the European Commission. It says Europe needs a radical step change in ambition and action for all skill levels and for all types of training and education. This is as important for people's careers, the prospects, and is for our competitiveness. Again, it resounds Draghi report, and also this strategy stresses two things. One, the skills that students need are many more than used to be in the past, and are not only disciplinary skills, but they are all sorts of skills. You know very well that when young people go to when they search for a job and they go to an audit for searching job, the enterprises now they don't ask you to solve an equation. They ask you, do you want to work in a team? Have you ever worked in a team? Are you available to travel? Are you available to mobility to go to work in another place? Are you available to flexibility? So means flexibility is a nice word to say working much more. And these are the questions they give to our master degree candidates when they search for a job. And I can tell you because I live in an area where there is a lot of offer of job, any possibility, but they don't find enough people. So there are other skills that we need to learn while we are studying. And the second part is lifelong learning. So the Union of Skills says, well, we have to reskill and upskill the elder workers, those who have to change their job because the world has changed. So this is also another important prerequisite that I say is behind the process of the joint European degree. You know, if we could root everything in a joint European degree, where you consider other skills, where you consider the challenges, where you consider the lifelong learning. Lifelong learning means that you have to decide what is really needed to learn in the 3+2+3 years of education in the Bologna process, and what is not possible to apprehend in that period, and that to be left to the lifelong learning. So is again a reflection on our systems. So what do we push in the 3+2+3 years? And what not, because the things we have to know as enormously increased. Old engineers, sorry to make again example of engineers, when they finished their studies 40 years ago, 50 years ago, I tell you this because an old engineer told me, they could survive in their profession for 30 years by just reading the books they used to study. New engineers, after 6 months, they have to reskill because systems are changing, especially in information technology. So the role of higher education should be provide high quality and competitive education and training opportunities, provide opportunities for people at all stages of their careers to update their educational skills, offering the so famous micro credential. Sure, you are reflecting on micro credential, this is the alliance, right? A lot, right? So micro credential that you can also obtain in the lifelong learning and attract and develop top talent in Europe by offering attractive study programs, including joint programs. You see, again, it comes back joint programs. So, in other words, the European Commission is insisting on this same goal, even by issuing different strategies. So the Union of Skills is not, again, on the joint European degree, but it is related to the joint European degree. That's why I jumped. Some other pillars in the Union of Skills strategy is the education on STEM discipline, and especially focusing on women in STEM, because the proportion is still lower than male portion. Increasing the accessibility of higher education to a wider range of learners, expanding credentials, fostering automatic recognition of study qualification, joint degree, facilitate the development of joint program, exploring the development of a legal status for alliances, again what I said already, and European competence framework for academic staff, which focus on revalorizing pedagogical roles in academia. That is also important. So we need to readapt our way of teaching, facing the innovation. I myself, I'm in a sabbatical year this year because, first of all, because I want to take a bit of a rest. I'm not resting, but not teaching. And secondly, because I realized that after the introduction of ChatGPT, that means end of 2022, November, launch November 2022, so 3.5 years ago. After that, my students at the exam are reacting completely differently. Completely. So when I ask questions, they answer like ChatGPT answers. So they start telling you the story. And if you interrupt them, I'm an engineer, I have to interrupt and ask, but we take a piece of paper and try to solve the problem. They say, but that was not in your slides. Of course, it was not in my slides. I mean, that single problem cannot be solved in my slide. It's new. But they are not at all able to react. At least this is my experience. I saw the difference. They are not reacting the same as they used to react before. And you know, can I tell you just one thing about artificial intelligence? I'm not an expert, but I'm sure that the artificial intelligence is considered probably the top innovation now. No? Wow, artificial intelligence is something that we substitute man and women. So really the best achievement of our research. But at the same time, the artificial intelligence will kill the innovation. Because if you continue asking to Gemini or ChatGPT something, and it will reply you, and you take that reply for granted, you will use it somewhere. And when somebody else will ask to artificial intelligence the same question, you will search and you will find your answer where you have used the answer, and will use that answer to respond to the other one. So imagine if all of us will ask something when ChatGPT was introduced immediately a joke about ChatGPT. That is the question. My wife says, so say my husband, not gender problem. My wife says that 2 plus 2 equal 5. And ChatGPT answers, no, your wife is wrong. 2 plus 2 is 4. And the other one says, look, my wife insisted that 2 plus 2 is 5. So ChatGPT said, okay, if your wife stays with this 5, it's fine. So ChatGPT agreed. It's not a joke. I tried to. So imagine if every one of us now says that 2 plus 2 is 5. So the next artificial intelligence system will look at all the stupid answers and say, it's 5. And one day it will be 5. This is the string. This is a little bit stupid. But think about it. The highest innovation that will kill creativity, that means innovation. Because innovating means thinking out of the box, right? Out of what we know already. How could have Einstein develop the relativity strategy? He was drawing, on paper attached to the wall. So how can you create if you just look at it? And I felt myself to need a rest, a stop, to go back to teach in a completely different way. Because I never blame my students. I say students has changed, but the fault is not on the students. If something is changing, we have to adapt because we are paid for teaching. They pay for coming to university. So we have to change. I have many young colleagues, they always blame the students. Oh, the students today are not as clever as they used to be. I don't know where it was living 20 years ago, but I see students that are as clever as myself or even more. The problem is not that they are clever or not. The problem is how do we teach and how do they study? Their task is to study. Our duty is to teach. And we have to change everything. Also because, again, sorry for the parenthesis of Italy, which is typical Italian, the telematic university now have more students in civil engineering than the traditional university. More in the telematic than in traditional ones. This is typical Italian. They do not exist in such a dimension abroad. You have private universities, but not just telematic university as we have in Italy. So this is something that is challenging. So the pedagogical roles in academia, again, the pedagogical role in academia means that we have to reskill teachers, professors, upskill and reskill teachers and professors, which is maybe one of the most difficult tasks a rector can undertake. The Union of Skills strategy is proposing a vocational education and training strategy. Again, the vocational education or the University of Applied Sciences, they do exist in many countries, not as such in Italy. And this is another point where we should find a common system. You know that we are in Italy ranked in the number of young people that got a degree very badly in Europe and the OECD as well. But we do not have this sector of education, that is the vocational education or University of Applied Sciences, where you just got bachelors. But Europe is plenty of this. Everywhere. I was in Malta, in Germany, but plenty, and we do not count the ITS, the diploma, because they are not at the AQF level 6. There are the European qualification standards. So to get the level 6, you have to have 3 years post-diploma. Usually ITS have 2 years. We have the professional bachelor degrees, but they're not so much developed yet in Italy. So the vocational education is also another topic because another important challenge. And I think for Italy, it should be a reflection undertaken. Skills portably initiative. So removing the skills-related barriers for workers moving, and the education package. These are things that the strategy Union of Skills will produce in the next month, as well as a board of experts to reflect on the Union of Skills. Now I speak 5:30. Okay. So I briefly mentioned at the end of the day, and as I said, tomorrow I have not followed the same scheme. So tomorrow I will go back to the joint European degree. But now I briefly mention to you other things, just quoting that in Italy we have a strategy for internationalization developed by Minister of University and Minister of Foreign Affairs. You can find it online in the website of the National Rectors Conference. It is not a revolutionary one, but it states the common pillars that I already told you about the European strategy. But what is particular is that, not change the slide, what is particular is that it mainly focuses the second cell. It mainly focuses on some countries. So the European Strategy for University, issued in 2020, stresses the cooperation with North America, with MENA and the Balkan Peninsula, with the countries of Africa continent, and with the economies, growing economy in the said like this, it's all the world, so it's not indeed the strategy, but the international cooperation, you have to know that it's quite a lot influenced by the policy of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So our ministers of University and Foreign Affairs, when they decide what are the countries where to invest more, they do not exactly have the same priorities. We as university, for example, have cooperation with some countries, but maybe our country, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is interested in others. I served also some years in Unitalia. I don't know if you know what is Unitalia. I do not know this is Unitalia. So Unitalia is what in other countries is called a British Council. They in Germany, Campus France in France. But Unitalia has a budget that is 5% of the budget of the Council of Campus France. So it's very little and cannot act so much. But Unitalia is very much influenced. It is based on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, not in the Ministry of University. And they invest with representatives at the Consul General offices in countries that are mainly decided by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And so where the country has economic interest or other sort of interest. This is something that we should be in the process, because the academic diplomacy is something different from maybe the policy of the company. And you know, I'm sure you are aware that the Italian developed this website, simply to show the offer of our university. It could be a pre-selection of university for the process of subscription for international students. And I mentioned just as to finish this part of today, and then I will maybe for discussion if you want. International cooperation means also looking at places and countries and universities, as I said also at the beginning, where we are facing problems of autonomy that is threatened, single person students that are threatened by political or geopolitical situation. When I was rector, I was audited by the by the Commission of the Italian Parliament on the case of Giulio Regeni. The case of Giulio Regeni was the chance to develop in the Rectors Conference a guideline for mission of students abroad. Again, if you want, you can download from the website of the National Rectors Conference. I think Simone also developed or maybe remember. So we developed a guideline saying what you should be careful when you cooperate in some situation, because it is the problem of safety and security in case of exchanges. Sometimes it's something we have to also look at. I was rector during the pandemic, the Afghanistan crisis, the beginning of full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and at a certain moment that it's better that I finish my rectorate because maybe it's myself that is bringing all this crisis. But when we were facing the beginning of pandemic and we wanted our students to come back from the places they were in Erasmus or students abroad, I phoned to many embassies in the world, and there was no evidence of how many Italian students there were in Russia, for example. I remember the ambassador of Russia told me, I would help students if I would know where they are. So they didn't know where they are. So the problem of safety security is not the scope of my speech today, but it's something that we have to take into consideration in international cooperation. Because if we go in another country, and for people who come in our country, of course, like especially in some situation, we have to know some basic principles. You know that indeed the case of Giulio Regeni was particular because he was taking his PhD at British University, and British University sent him to Egypt. So there were two actors in that process. But this is something that we have also to be careful. So we propose as Rectors Conference that every student that goes abroad will read this guideline and accept what is written. Please not accept, sorry, acknowledging that he knows. It doesn't mean that the responsibility of God, there are insurances and so on, but the acknowledges that he knows the healthcare situation, the facilities that you can find, and the problem of other things. And when we proposed this to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that is dealing with also the travel of Italians abroad, you know, there's a website Viaggiare Sicuri, if you go on Viaggiare Sicuri in Italiano. Yes, there is another model you can say where you are and when you go and when you come back, so on. And they were something very much interested in our guidance. But that is one point. The other point is I was to mention to you the importance of Scholars at Risk. Scholars at Risk is a network based in the United States, but with some 30 maybe countries, and some Italian universities that join Scholars at Risk. Scholars at Risk is doing a very good advocacy. So as a policy in the Italian National Rectors Conference, when there is a crisis in a country and that country is not directly involved with Italian students or professors, so the problem is not directly of Italian students or professors, the advocacy is made by Scholars at Risk. In other words, if you have to say something about Serbia and you don't have students in Serbia, rather than make a statement, the National Rectors Conference, it makes, we call the Scholars at Risk to advocate for this situation. And in 2023, we founded, I don't know if you're aware, a network of universities for peace in Italy, joint one, also the website of the National Rectors Conference, that it was made exactly for addressing the problem of conflict. And last year, a national PhD program on peace studies was created. One of the national PhD programs, you know, the PNLL Tira. There were many, some would close, some would continue. This has I would, Simone, if you agree, I would leave maybe 10 minutes for reaction question. And if you don't have, I have a lot of questions for you. I mean, these points are real questions because maybe we can also think more because I've not touched many of these topics. But for example, language. Shall we say something about the language? The open science, the ranking. You know, in Quora, they are reflecting about the European ranking system because we will never match the requirements of other continents. So they are real open topics that maybe I won't have the time to speak about all of them, but if you are interested in one or another, we can address. For example, I think that the problem of open science is a big issue. I have the chance also to be president of GAR. So you know what is, I hope you know what is GAR. So if you have EduROM here inside, and if you have EduROM here is because this company runs the internet connection of university. And we are very much working on the open science because open science is critical for cooperation on one side. But where are our data nowadays? Where are the servers with our data? Do we have in Europe an autonomy? Do they have in Africa an autonomy in data management, or they are mainly managed by some big companies, usually placed in the States? And what will be the future? You know, the software provider are increasing enormously the cost of their software because now we are used to use their softwares. It's difficult to get rid of the software, and this will increase the cost. And then what about freedom? There are many reflections on many other topics. That if you speak about internationalization, there are so many things. And a language in the alliance, for example, in my alliance, we are reflecting about the use only using English, or what about the other languages? Because using a language is not just using a language, is speaking of a culture background. And we are an alliance with all countries in Latin languages spoken countries, so Spanish, French, Portuguese, Romanian, and Italian. But it's that meaningful to develop other languages instead of English, where all the world communicates in English, or how to balance the two. The funding, how do we get funding for cooperation? As you saw in our survey, mobility is still at stake because of funding. In many cases, students cannot afford their own funding. How to balance the local and global role of university. So we have to look at our area where we are placed. I think that for more or less size of Viterbo and my university has a little bit more students, but we are very much rooted right where we are, but we look at the entire world when we speak about internationalism. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. And I was just thinking of these open questions. I'm work for the student secretariat, and I have this perspective from the student point more than research. And the idea is that both of this mission of the first, third mission and internationalization together as a kind of difficulty to integrate each other, because while the third mission has to do with eradication, so the need of dealing with education, the local internationalization of it. So this is a trait for sure, because we are trying to change, but at the same time, it's difficulty, problem, in order to improve the ability of integrate national local society. And it seems from the perspective of our office, it seems that they are kind of really different territories that has to find a way that maybe fund problems. So I would just.
Well, I think that there is a sort of internationalization at home that is important. So even if our students will never go abroad, even either during the studies or they will work where they have studied or in Italy or whatever, I think that internationalization is something that opens your mind anyway. So being international, I don't think is just speaking bad English or traveling or whatever, but having a perspective on the problem of the planet that are different, not just our point of view. And also, there are many enterprises that are now international by definition because they belong to multinational, for example. So I'm convinced that many of our students will find a job maybe in a company that is the company is international, even if maybe they will work here in Viterbo or in Italy, but they will have relation with other countries. So I think more and more that will happen. So it doesn't, as I said, this is not a contradiction. For example, as you asked for my town, in my town, Brescia, in 1912, so more than 1 century ago, a merchant, he was selling wine, and he had the idea to found a university specialized in economy for international relationships, so international economy and trade, in 1912. So at that time, we didn't have foreigners in Brescia. All the people were Italians and so on. But he was thinking that the future of enterprises would have been to be international. So he wanted to find that sort of university. And then he did not succeed because he died too early. But there was an idea. So I don't think he was thinking about people traveling and going here and there, but he was thinking that a strong economy, as Brescia is a strong economy from a manufacturer point of view, would have attracted and installed relationship with many other countries. And it happened. We have a lot of medium-sized enterprises, PMI, that were founded by people that even don't got a diploma, didn't get any diploma, not a degree. But now they are multinational. So they have premises in some 12, 15 countries on the planet. And they studied up till the scuola media, I don't know to say, the primary, secondary school, not even a diploma. So, but their companies are multinational. And so what if our students go to work in that environment? It will be international by definition. So, and that means helping your local economy. So I don't see a contradiction. Of course, they are two, sometimes can be separated, but I don't see a contradiction in investing in internationalization. You invest also in the quality of your own industrial system. Because how can not be? So.
Yes, no, just here, I wasn't talking about contradiction. I was talking about something we have to deal with.
Yes, okay.
Because
sorry.
The improvement of the ability of the local society to integrate more from these.
Yes. Well, it's a good question, and it's not the only situation of University of Viterbo, because also in my university, we attract much more students coming from, which I would say, the less economically developed countries, because that doesn't mean that they are less developed. They are economically less developed from the point of view of economy. And because we don't have any student from United States, if you wanted to ask this, and I don't think we will have in the future students from the United States, provided that Trump doesn't get fully mad, that it's on the good track to be. But I think that one point is that Europe is felt as Europe. So probably, I don't know if it's a good answer, but probably there is not so much traction from another European country to come. I'm not talking about Erasmus, but talking about getting their degree in another European country, because for many professions, then there are barriers to overtake. So Erasmus experience is something particular, but if you finish your courses in another European country, maybe the pros are less than the contras, because then you have to get recognized your diploma. If is as engineer, I cannot go to France and be a professional directly. I have to pass an exam, something like that. So maybe that can be an explanation. But the European University Alliances are working very much on this exchange of students among Europe, because these are based in Europe. And so in my case, in my alliance, there are many programs of exchange. We are setting up joint degrees, new joint degrees that imply that you spend at least 1 year maybe in another country. So the European alliances, I think, will have this mobility inside Europe. Attracting from other more economically developed areas is a big challenge. In Italy, for example, you know, there is movement that the people from the south, they migrate to the north, and the people in Milan, they make the bachelor in Milan, that they make the master in Switzerland, because it seems that the more you go north, the better it is. And I don't know if it is true, but this little bit the movement, no? And so there is a kind of this sort of mobility. There are other presence. For example, I know that Germany has developed quite a big strategy to have branches in some countries where they they run a university. For example, in Oman, there is a university, a German university, and for sure in Germany, they attract many rich guys that come from Oman because they meet them there. Behind the transnational education initiative, this one, there was another goal that was to develop the branches of Italian university abroad. And that was the initial goal. They should have financed only 10 initiatives with 10 million each. Then, I don't know why, but they decided to finance many more programs with less money. So now we don't have enough money. I was in Peru before Easter in a transnational education initiative. I spent there one week. But we don't have enough money to develop a branch office in Peru. You need a lot of money. You need a lot of conditions. But that was the idea. And probably this is another way of internationalization that we are not cultivating very much. Whereas you know that many United States university, Australian universities have branch offices in Italy, in Florence and in Rome especially. They are more in clubs. So they are that university with premises in Florence or in Rome. But sorry. I know that you're developing this. That's great. Yes, the United States system is the enclave. So they have their own university, their own students. They come here for a while, and they don't have many relationship with Italian universities. I don't think that's the model. I would not go for that model. I think that the branch office must be in cooperation with the local universities. Otherwise, it's colonization. Few years ago, I read in the newspaper a former student of University of Florence that was there after the flood of 1966. You remember the big flood of Florence? There were a lot of people coming from the United States to help saving books, paintings in Florence. No, if you see the movie of Tira, it's very nice. No? La Meglio Gioventù. So this guy, getting older, he donated some $15 million to the University of Florence. So I phoned to my colleague, Alessandra, rector of the University of Florence, and they said, oh, lucky you that received $15 million. And she said, it's not me, it's the branch office of, I don't know which, Syracuse, I don't know, University, United States, that received the money in Florence, but they goes to Syracuse University. So it was a United States students that used to be in Florence and gave the money to a American university, not to the University of Florence either. So there are many things, but I think the branch office incorporation is a good way. Of course, again, you go into Uzbekistan. Probably it's more difficult to do that in Canada or the United States or whatever. But it's anyways good. It's a good point. Taking into consideration that the world is changing, Trump will accelerate the decline of the United States. He's right now accelerating the decline. The future is not in the United States. The future is India, in China, Brazil, in all African countries. That's the future. So maybe you are in Europe, of course, right? So maybe you are anticipating the next geopolitical power. No, I now maybe have to finish, but I fully agree with you about the brain problem. This is a big problem, and we should not make any brain drain. I think cooperation is made for cooperating, recognizing the value of these other countries. So doing things together and learning from each other. Maybe one of the oldest branch offices in abroad is the one of Bologna in Buenos Aires. But I don't think they are a legal entity recognized there. They have some space in another university, and they have regular courses with professors that go there to teach courses. But I think they are recognized, as you said. So, and that's one of the experiences, maybe that is longer. Yeah, during Uzbekistan, Kafoscar is something in China, Polytechnic is in China, Bicocca is in Maldives, because I'm very envious. I'm very envious of these because they study corals, and so wow. Maldives, I think, a little bit better, no? Okay, let's continue tomorrow. Yeah, of course.
Just also to say to the people attending online, if they were able to attend everything, and then we will meet again tomorrow online at 9:30. Okay, so please also try to have some questions for Maurizio, Tira, and see you tomorrow.